All right. Welcome everybody to today's office hours. I hope this will be informative for you guys. Topic today is turning your time into workflows. At the end of last week's office hours, we had a question from one of the users that was just in my feeling as she was asking is just like, how do I even begin, or where do I begin on doing some workflows? And we've covered this before. I wanted to cover it just a little bit differently and hoping that maybe it'll make a little more sense to you, or it'll make sense to you and go through that process. So it's all about taking what you currently do and turning that into workflows. So for those that don't know me, my name is Mark Stepp. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve. Been working with real estate agents for the past 33 years, teaching technology, automations, just, helping you guys create a sustainable business and helping you understand the why. Again, today's agenda, we're going to just kind of talk about some topics, defining what you do and figuring that out. A lot of people don't even know what they do. So helping you do that, turning what you do into workflows. And it comes down to a framework that I like to use called design, build, run, repeat. And we'll go through that process and kind of go through there. Some information on help and some premium services options that you've got if you need that. As a reminder, for those that have missed previous workflows, you can go out to realvolve.com. If you've missed previous office hours, you can go out to realvolve.com/office hours. And we've got all the past recorded office hours out there so you guys can review them as you need. Last week, we actually went through a review of a lot of the office hours, of ones that would be beneficial for people to use whenever they just want to learn something, and certainly make that available through that office hours. You can go to our YouTube channel. There's lots of sources for that information. So let's start off by starting with a little bit of a basics, making sure that as we go through this, you understand where I'm coming from first, and then we'll how to get there. It's always I've got another framework we teach called MAP, and it's talking about make a plan, figuring out where you are and where you want to go. This particular one is kind of the same basis, where you have to define your starting point. Honestly, you have to know where you're starting at. So one of the things that I want everybody to do, if you're just starting off on workflows, you just want to figure out how to create the workflow from the very beginning, is define your base process. What is it that you do right now? A lot of times agents will be busy on a daily basis, their team busy on that, weekly, doing things. And it's like they know, you guys know what you want to do. You know that's there, but it's not necessarily written down anywhere. And it's always good to have a written form of what you're doing. Now, what I recommend is for 2 to 4 weeks. And a lot of you say, well, that's too long. And for some that is. But for 2 to 4 weeks, even if it's a few days at least, write down what you do. Every 30 minutes, make a little notation of what you do and log it. Now, you can go out to workflowsecrets.info, time audit. There's a great resource there where you can kind of just print this off. It's kind of a log of what you can do, or you can actually click in and type it in and do it right here. But basically every 30 minutes from the time you get up, I do not get up at 4:30 a.m. Sometimes I'm up until that doing some stuff, but what is it that you're doing, and is it work or personal? Some things you don't necessarily need a workflow on because it's a personal thing, but if you do anything that's work related, definitely put it in there and identify, when did I do it? And kind of define what that process is. You can click into this resource, type it in, and do some printing out and stuff. But if it's nothing else more than just writing it on a piece of paper, logging what you did. Now, what I typically like to do is say, okay, on the piece of paper, who is this that we're logging? Because you really want to do this for each of your team members. Is it you or whomever? If you're an individual agent working by yourself, then that's fine. One thing you may want to do is identify, if I had a team member playing a certain role, say listing coordinator or transaction coordinator or whatever, what would that role be? Write that down. Who should be doing this? And then if it's the team member, at the top listing, that they're the listing coordinator or transaction coordinator would be the best thing to do in the first place. But each team member, yourself, write down a log of what you're doing. Then we'll take each of those logs, and it's really good if you can do multiple days, because everybody does different things at different times, and some things spread out, have distance between them as far as time, that you may not do certain things on certain days. So having a full log, that's why I say 2 to 4 weeks, by that time you really have identified everything that you do, within that given time frame. Typically write those down and then group them into what I call the core strategies. And we've gone over the core strategies before, but you'll group them and then even subgroup them in that as well. Just as a quick review, the core strategies would be conversions, all those things you do for converting a lead, getting and converting, operations, the things that you do to make money, your listing process, your transaction process, training your team, and there's lots of different operations pieces. So that's kind of a sub process. The retention is, how do I retain those customers? And then the experience is making the memories. This is really the world-class service that we talk about, and we're going to cover that as well with gaps. But what we want to do is on that piece of paper, you've written down all your stuff. Your team has written down all your stuff. What you're wanting to do is start looking at and maybe circling or highlighting or whatever you want to do there. Decide what you and only you can do. If it's something like meeting with a client, doing the listing process or whatever, that should be you. That should be the person that is the primary contact or whomever. And if you're the transaction coordinator listening to this, it's going to be your listing agent or whomever. But define what you and only you should be or could be doing, and identify that in the list. Everything else on that list can be or potentially should be delegated, and identifying who should it be delegated to is something extremely important. The other thing that we want to look at is, even though for the past 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is that you've logged all this information, there may be things that you haven't done or you haven't been able to do because of time constraints or whatever. But I also want you to think about, what is your vision of a world-class service? If you were in your customer's seat, what would they like to have done? The whole golden rule, do unto others what you would like them to do unto you. This is the world-class service that we talk about as part of experiences. And what we want to do is identify, what is your vision of world-class service? What is it that would give your customers at that point in time in that process the best service that they can get? And basically what you're doing is filling the gaps within the workflow, and it's great and possible service. And what that does is gives you a resource for, or at least a foundation of what things would be great to add if I had time to add them, or If some automation could be done so that I don't have to worry about it, but it would give them great service, figure that out. A lot of times we just get into a mundane process cycle that is like, okay, it's time to do this, it's time to do this, it's time to do this, just because those are the things that need to get done. But it's not necessarily the thing that gives your customer the great service that they maybe need. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in a second. So what is gaps? What are some of the things, questions that maybe you could ask yourself to help build those gaps piece? What questions do you commonly receive? If you get, you're going through maybe the listing process, or you're going through the closing process, and somebody calls you up and says, hey, what's happening here? Or can you give me this information? Or what do I need to do next? Those are questions that are coming from your customer that I call JIT, just in time. If you had something to give them just in time to answer that question before they actually asked that question, you would be giving better service. Because if they're having to ask, you're not giving them what they need. Okay, so think about those whenever you're thinking about world-class service and thinking about the things that you could fill in. So if they're calling up and saying, can you tell me, is the listing in MLS? I mean, it's a simple one. Everybody should know that, but are you telling your customer, hey, I just put this into MLS? If not, if they're calling you and asking you, those are things that need to be added to the system. They take no time from you because it can just be done in a workflow as an automatic email, automatic text, or whatever, and it just goes through it. And that is something that can fill the gaps with gaps. What timelines should they expect? A lot of times at the very beginning, they don't even know what they don't know. They don't know what kind of timelines we're doing. So think about the timeline that you're in for whatever process you're in, and define what that timeline should be. Make sure that they know what it is. And then at each point of that timeline, let them know, hey, we're now here. We're now at this point. This is, we hit this milestone, whatever it is. And through that process, that communication that you're giving them, that gives them a better experience. When do they need to know it? Keeping them informed is really the same thing. What challenges could arise? Now, this is one that I think is probably as critical for at least the brand new first-time home buyers as anything. They don't know, again, what they don't know, and they don't know what challenges could arise. And keeping them informed prior to it potentially arising is something good to know. Hey, this is a possibility. Now, I don't anticipate it, but it is a possibility. If it does, I know how to handle it. So it shows your professionalism. It shows that you know what you're doing. And this could be as simple as, we have a potential buyer. They've given us a price. There's some kind of contingency. This is what we need to expect. There may be a problem with whatever. And based off of that, filling in the blanks. What is your plan for handling that challenge? If this does happen, I know we can do this, this, and this, making sure. And if it does do it, it's like, okay, remember back, I told you this could happen. Well, it did. That's fine. This is how we're going to handle it. Go through that process. Putting that into your workflows and making it possible so that if there is some kind of inspection contingency and the inspection fails, what is the process for handling it or whatever. So there's things that you can do to build sub workflows. In the event this happens, you can start the sub workflow that then kicks in and does the process of sending out additional emails, additional texts that maybe you don't necessarily need all the time, but at least you have a workflow built for it. And then the question becomes, did everything go as expected? You know, if you think about the things that your customer asked, the customer situations, all the different things that did happen, did you have them covered? And if you did, perfect. If you didn't, what could I have done to put into place systems, information, whatever that could have made that a better expected outcome? So between defining what you do, who on your team is also doing it, and deciding who needs to be doing what, all your vision stuff, going through, building all your gap questions, all that kind of stuff. Now we can go through and start defining what a workflow actually does for you. So you take all these parts and pieces, and you can, this is one way. Some people do it this way. I like it this way because you get a real good visual representation of the process. But write each element on a separate sticky note. If it's something you do, highlight it with a certain, or you can just use a certain color if you wanted to, of sticky note. Highlight who's doing it, what they're doing, and any details that really need to go with it. But it could just be one topic if you want, and a color, and put it on a timeline on the wall. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, whatever, and stick it on there. Then look at it. Place it on the wall. Stick the sticky note on the wall, and then look at it. Look to see, does it flow? Does something happening before I really need this piece here so I can do this piece here? Figure those out, getting those around. And that way it helps you identify what days, how many days I need between things, but you get a real good visual look at your business. Any questions on that so far? I think this is, no? Okay. So then, once you've got this all on your wall, for bigger process, if this is a two-step process, obviously you don't need to do this. But for bigger process, your listing process, your closing process, some kind of marketing type, pre-marketing process or something. These are things that would be good. And your board obviously probably won't look like this. This is kind of a over dramatization of what a process could look like, but potentially it could. I've seen workflows that have had 120, 130 different tasks during the closing process that just amaze you. So think about that. So then we're going to go into what I call the design, build, run, repeat process. And so it's a matter of taking all those things that are on this wall, and putting them into a form that you can put them into Realvolve. What we really want to do is get these things into Realvolve at some form, but it's better to kind of design it outside of Realvolve first. You've designed it up here as far as the overall scheme of things, but getting it into a form that is good for any system, any software, whether it's Realvolve or whatever, is going to be something important. Now, we have a resource out at help.realvolve.com, and you can go to Getting Started. So if we come out here to the help.realvolve.com, we've got this section here called Getting Started. Clicking on Getting Started, there are, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on here. There are lots and lots of training document pieces that we've got that help you get started on different things, as far as setting up and doing other processes and stuff. But I've got one document that I put here. Actually, there's two links here that they basically do the same thing. One is the workflow worksheet PDF, and one is the Google version of that, in a way, the Google Sheets version. So if you go out and you look at just the worksheet, if you want to print this off, you want to do this at night off the computer, you just want to write things down, and this is something that you could delegate to your team. Once you've got it up on the board, all the things that you've got up on the board, that was kind of the brainstorming and things. And that piece there, if we go back, I do want to make a notation here. This process, what you do for the past 2 to 4 weeks, what you want to do for your world-class service, this is not something you delegate to somebody else to decide for you. These are your systems. These are things that you need to define for your business. This is not something that you want to leave up to a part-time assistant to define your processes. And I don't think you would, but I just want to make sure that that's noted. But once it is defined, then you can come back and say, well, I need you, my assistant, to build this into Realvolve. That's perfectly acceptable. And what you can do is take this worksheet, take each of those sticky notes and identify, what is it that activity is about? Who's supposed to do it? Is it done with the customer, with a buyer, the seller, the title company, whatever? Who's it done with? And what would be the calculation, the number of days from whatever milestone it is? So if we were to look at this list where maybe you have the number of days at the top, sometimes it's based off of just straight number of days. Sometimes this activity has to be done 3 days after something else, and identifying those is kind of what the key important part is whenever you're building this on the wall. Once you've got it on the wall, then you can transfer that right into the calculation area here for this, and then any additional notes. So you're just taking all of those sticky notes and putting them into the workflow worksheet. Now, if you prefer to do it on the computer, we've got a computer version of this through the spreadsheet version. Same type of thing. You can write it in, who's it assigned to as far as your team members by role. And this is, again, a good thing to do if this task, even though you may be a lone agent, you are a single agent, no team. If you did have a team, who would do this piece? Is it the assistant? Is it the listing coordinator? Whatever. Identify those tasks ahead of time so that you know where all your work is needing to get done. At that point, once you get to a point where you can hire that person, you've already got your systems defined on what they're going to do. It's not a matter of figuring out, oh, I've hired this person, now what am I going to have them do? You've already defined every step of what they need to do within this workflow. I was on Clubhouse a few months ago, and they were talking about when to hire an assistant. And I kid you not, there were at least 10 people that said, I have an assistant. Now what should I have them do? It's like, if you don't know what you want them to do ahead of time, shouldn't even be hiring them, because you don't even necessarily know if they're qualified to do what you need them to do. So identify what is it that you need them to do. That's probably so critical in this particular stage. Who am I going to do it with? The type of event it is, the calculations from start date, from completion date, all these different dates and stuff that are available. And then any notes, do I need to make a template for it? Do I need to make a SMS, an email, or whatever for this? You can put all those types of things. Is there a checklist that I need to go? What's in that checklist? These are types of things that you can put into the notes area. Once you've defined this as either the print version or the spreadsheet version, you can do this in your head if you want. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but this is an easy way of doing it. Then at that point, you've got the resources that you can do to go through the process. Whenever you're, fill in all your current processes into that spreadsheet, into that document, do whatever it is. And then also at that point, make sure that you fill in those gap items, the things that would help with world-class service. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Once you've got that decided, written down, you now have your workflow designed. It's in a design phase. Then we need to go build it into Realvolve. We need to put it into Realvolve. So then you go in and you take that spreadsheet, you go into the workflows, you add the workflow process. Actually, let me just go ahead and go in into here, make sure that we cover every bit of this. So up here at the top of our screen, you can go into workflows. On the left-hand side, if you're brand new, you're going to have just a few of these. I've got multiple workflows of things that I've done throughout time. Click on the plus, create a new workflow. Give it the name of the workflow process, whatever it is that you're doing. If this is, lead process, type in lead process, whatever. Listing process, transaction process, any of the core elements, the core strategy items, that's going to be where you're going to put this in. And I would advise that you guys go with the things that you need most. If you're needing to bring leads in and process those leads, do the lead conversion piece first. If you've already got leads in, but you need to have your listing process better defined, do the listing process. It doesn't matter which one you do, as long as you're doing something. And it really doesn't even matter that you get all of your spreadsheet in, as long as you've got the most important things in, and you can go back and add additional things later. But giving this a name, name your workflow, whatever it is, and then decide, is this a thing that I'm going to do with either a contact in my contact database? Is it a listing where I'm going to do it in my property database, or a transaction where I'm going to do it in my transactions database? You got to figure out that, because there are different fields, different merge fields, different dates, things that we do that are different based off of where this is coming from. If we're doing a listing process, we would go to the property and then click on add. So now we've got basically our first part of this workflow is we've got to define the workflow name. Then we start adding each of those things. So you would go to your list here, whatever that task is, whoever does it, whoever's done with the calculations, you're going to go through and start adding each one of those in here. What's the title? Who's it assigned to? How's it scheduled? When do I do this? If there's any kind of checklist, if there's any kind of email that needs to go out, the action, we're going to put those in actions. We've got lots of training in our training on how to fill this part out, but you're just taking whatever you've defined in your world-class scenario of things that need to get done and put it in here. This is the one thing that you could have an assistant do. If you don't want to be doing the grunt work of building the workflow into Realvolve, absolutely, that can be done by somebody else. But you have to know what your workflow is beforehand. You have to know all the different steps that are involved. Otherwise, you're letting somebody else drive your business, and that they may drive it into a tree. Okay. So you put your workflow worksheet, spreadsheet, whatever, into Realvolve. You're going through that process. You're choosing the process that you need most. You add the most important things. If you've got multiple pages, if there's really things that you want to make sure are in there first, highlight those, enter those. The calculations, it doesn't matter what order necessarily they're placed on the spreadsheet. It will order them by the key date, whatever date it is, and the calculation that goes with that key date. Anytime you're looking at your list, let me do this. Realvolve lead seller. Actually, no. Let's go a listing process. Active listing. So this is one thing here. So if you look at the way this is set up, and I get questions on this a lot. Can we reorder this list? Well, technically it's in an order that probably will make the most sense if you understand that order. Everything, it has a key date, a milestone date that is important to the calculation. So we group all of those key dates together. So anything that has to do with expiration date is going to be together. And then we're doing it by the calculation number of days, basically, of either before or after. So in this case, one day after the expiration date is in the list after anything. In this case, it's 30 days before the expiration date. So time-wise, this is something that's going to happen 30 days before the expiration date. Then this comes on expiration date. The problem is you don't know what those dates necessarily are. You don't know what the milestone date actually is whenever you're looking at this list necessarily. But everything is ordered by either before, which it'll be above that milestone date, or after that milestone date by its associated calculation. So 0 days after are all together, 1 day after is together, 6 days. All these are date in MLS, basically, of when things happen. And then this other one's the expiration date. So those are, seeing that order, these are ordered in a way that you can find them and locate them easily. The thing that you don't have to worry about is whenever you're entering this information, you don't have to worry about what order you put them in. So if you've got some things that are more important, you've highlighted of some sort, you want to put those in first, go for it. It will calculate its date and its placement in Realvolve based off of this calculation part. So that's important. So, add the most important things first. If things aren't that important and you need to use this workflow, use it. Use it the way it is. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Realize that. Add the gap items to improve your service. Those are things that are just going to add value to your customer as you go along. So you're going to go through and you're going to build this. At some point, you get to a point where you have an entire workflow of all of the things that you've identified. Okay. Once you've done that, then you go through the run process. And this is, we're going through design, build, run, repeat. And we'll go through this. Run is, you're just going to start running your automation. You're going to run your workflow. Even though it may not be fully complete, maybe you've just highlighted a few of the key important things that you want to start off with, but you go ahead and run it. Run the process from start to finish. Check for continuity. Did things happen in time sequence that they should have happened? Check for your JIT, just in time content. Previously, somebody was calling you 2 days before something and asking when was this going to happen. Well, send your JIT items, your just-in-time items, 2 days before they expected it, or that they were calling you before. Getting them in the know before they need to know it is service. Your waiter comes to your table to fill your water before the water's empty. You want to do it beforehand. If you're at a restaurant and you're wanting to have good service, you're not having to ask for that service. The waiter comes in and gives it to you just before you need it, just in time. All right. Run the process from start to finish, checking those things. Also, as you're doing this, and you may want to run this on a test transaction, a test contact, a test listing first. Check your content on your emails, your SMS. Check for correctness. Are there any kind of spelling problems? You should not have that, but if there are any kind of spelling, change the templates. Are there any merge fields that are missing? Read the entire content of the email or the SMS, and does the sentence sound right? If for whatever reason you missed a merge field, some value of some sort that should have been in that template, if it's not there, it's going to blank out. It's going to be blank, and then it'll bring them together. So if the sentence doesn't sound right, it could be that you missed a merge field. If you have a missing merge field, merge fields can be added to checklists. And before you send out that email, verify that any merge fields that are used in that template are in the checklist that are and filled in, and don't send that SMS, that email, until you've got all the merge fields filled in that are used within that template. Just an easy way of making sure they're filled in is using the checklist. I've seen countless times when somebody sends something, it's like, well, I thought I normally fill that in, but I didn't. And if you didn't, then it would be good to put that in as a checklist. But you go through and you run the entire process from start to finish and making sure that it is all in good shape. Okay? Now, at the end of that process, you've gone through from start to finish. At the end of that process, we want to review and repeat. We want to review, did the workflow performed as it was intended? Did we do and get to an end result? Now, if you're doing it as a test, it's kind of a little bit arbitrary. You didn't necessarily run into problems. You didn't run into challenges that could test that workflow a little bit more, but we'll get to that. But did it work as intended? Did you get all the emails? Did you get all the text messages? Did you get all the reminders, the phone calls, all that? If you did, great. Did you get calls or text messages with questions from your client? If you got calls or questions, is that something that could have been prevented had I sent an email out a couple days earlier with that information? Getting that JIT, those JIT items resolved. Review it from your client's perspective. Could I have done anything differently or better? If I was this client, what would I have wanted to know? What would I have wanted to learn? You guys as agents know your processes, or should know your processes. You know the real estate process, and that knowledge is not in your client. And things are mysteries. Things are up in the air, and there's concern, and there's anticipation, there's anxiety happening. What is it that you can do to resolve those elements in your client's perspective prior to the process actually happening? At that point, we go back to design. You're figuring these things out so that we can go back to design and we can figure out, where should these things go? If I missed something, where could I stick that element? And if I need to change things, need to modify placement of things, redesign it, then go back in, change the process within Realvolve, build those changes into Realvolve, run it, repeat. This is the design, build, run, repeat. You get into a point where you're just going through these elements, design, build, run, repeat, over and over again until you don't have to design anymore. You don't have to build anymore. Your process is fully complete and you're systematized in a way that gives that world-class service over and over and over again. Any questions on that?
Mark, I have two questions about the workflow.
Okay.
And just came across this the other day. If there's a change due to either the buyer or the seller where there's a date that needs to be changed, and you go into the system and change that closing date, for example, or an inspection date, does that update all the tasks within the workflow automatically to where the reminders automation will be automatically updated?
Yes, anything that is not already complete, if it's completed, then it won't change the date on it. But if it is not complete, if it's an activity that is not complete, it will change the date of any calculation. So, you know, if your date in MLS here, if you have it, now this is not a good one because this should be a kind of after the fact type of thing. But if you don't know what date your date in MLS item is, and you've started this workflow, it's going to go into your database and not have a date. Once you add that date into MLS, then each one of these items will be recalculated automatically and put onto your calendar as needed. And I mean, that's an important piece of the workflow. If it's not completed already, it will recalculate it for you.
Okay, great. And my second question was, I don't know if it's just something that I didn't see right, but if I have a task or activity that goes into the past due, and I think I clicked on an email activity and it automatically just sent it without me being able to preview that. Is that correct? Does it change the dynamics if you go into a past due on an activity? Is my question.
No, not necessarily. I mean, anything that has, let me see if I've got any actions here. So the one thing that's important is if it's something that you know should be automatic, it should just go and be good all the time. Whenever you're sending a message, you can send it as being automatically sent. Just send it. We do have the option of send manually with preview. Now, if you know that it should be manual with preview, and it should be, then it should pop up in preview. The only thing possible there is that it recognized that, actually, I don't even think that would do it. I was going to say, if you don't have somebody assigned to receive that email, it can't send it. So therefore, it may not bring it. But if it's set for manually with preview, it should pop up and give you the option to preview it before it goes out. You do have the ability to just hit send and just let it send. But if you've asked with preview, it should pop up and ask them, even if it's past due.
And then on text, you cannot preview text, right? They're just going to automatically go out.
You can preview text as well.
Okay. I'll double check. I'll go back and look at that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. There was a question about the Google version of this. Yes. So if you come here, that worksheet is right here. There's a Google version right here. You just go out to help.realvolve.com and it's under the Getting Started section of Realvolve. So you go into Getting Started and we have the worksheet, PDF, and the Google Sheet version as well. So there's that. Any other questions about that piece? All right. I think we're going to be ending just a little bit soon, so we'll open up for other questions. Okay, I'm going to give a plug for it. Obviously, I wrote a book on this. I mean, this is actually my son and I wrote a lot of it, and he published it basically for me. But the Our Best Workflow Secrets, what we just went through, I mean, there's sections in here that go over all of this. There's some worksheet pieces, lots of content, lots of stuff. You can get that out on Amazon for those that want to go a little bit deeper dive into this process. Certainly take a look at that. It's not one of those big bestsellers. It's for those people that are getting started and going through the process, but it's a huge resource, especially if you're into real estate and wanting to set up workflow processes. Whether you're using Realvolve or not, there's things in here that you can't do in any other software. I mean, it just doesn't have it built in. Realvolve does. So I kind of go through that. But that's it. That's all I've got for today. We're about 10 minutes. Is there any other questions? Let's go through the questions answer. For those, I guess I should talk about premium services. If this is something, if what we just went through is something that you need to do, you really need to do it, but you don't feel like you can do it yourself, you want help doing it, that's what our premium services actually does. We've got team members that will go through, all of them are real estate certified. They've been going through this process. They'll take you through different versions depending on what you need, but you can go through, you can attend the premium services process. We do offer, because you've gone through this, a 25% off for that. But there's just a ton of things that the navigators through premium services can go through and help you get organized and through that process. Help, the help, there's all kinds of help that we've got. The How Do I, which steps you through things. Submit a ticket if you have a problem, have an error of some sort or something happening. You can click on submit a support ticket. Our support team will reach out to you. The help button takes you to the help site as well. Contact us. Updates is out there as well. I'm open for any other questions outside of this topic if you want as well. Going once. Going twice. All right, guys, I'll give you an extra 10 minutes back. Thank you for joining today. Next week, I don't think we're going to have office hours next week. I've got a family medical thing that I'm dealing with, and will be out myself. And I'm not sure that Lisa is able to take over, but we will let you guys know on Facebook, on our Facebook group, if we have it or not. So everybody, thank you for attending, and we'll see you not next week, but the following week. Have a great day.